Hello everybody, welcome to today's webinar. I'm really excited about this one. This continues our theme at the moment of equality, diversity, volunteer recruitment, and just generally making more lovely volunteering communities for our non-profit organisations. Today I've got Julie with me from 11. Julie is head of strategy. She'll come on to do her introduction shortly, but I'll just start by saying this. When I wanted to do a webinar on communication and getting the authenticity correct, I saw no other person that I wanted to speak to other than Julie with their agency that have picked up numerous awards. So thank you very much, Julie, for jumping onto this morning's webinar. It's lovely to see you.
Thank you. Pleasure, Martin.
Today we're going to be going through probably around about a 20-minute presentation. There will be opportunities for questions towards the end. I will kick off with just going through a little bit about Rostify. I know some of the people, I can see the room's filled up really nicely. I can see a lot of people, either names that I recognize that are Rostify customers or people that have been on previous webinars. So please just forgive me while I do the normal spiel for the first minute, but then we're going to jump into some juicy insights and go through what the main theme of the day is going to be about, which should be excellent. So give me just 2 seconds while I pop over to my presentation. Hopefully you can see that. Okay, so Rostify's mission is to connect communities to events and causes that they're passionate about. So we have around about 3 million volunteers and staff that are managed through the platform, and we operate in 35 different countries. The usual stuff on here, forgive me, I'm going over it again, but we have an excellent star rating on Capterra, and we help volunteer programs scale, improve, and grow. And in doing so, we get to create lots of lovely communities around our local area and globally too. So, and we are a global solution. I was going to take this slide off our deck, but then I realized there's actually something at the bottom of it that's really relevant to what we're talking about today, which is the languages that the platform appears in. That's actually grown since we've last updated the deck as well. And I think really this is important. It's about understanding not everybody's in your community will English be their first language, and we recognize that in our platform too, and it gives you the flexibility to show volunteering opportunities and their profile in a language that is better suited to them. So it's about, already we're on slide 2 and we're already talking a little bit more about being inclusive, which will be a theme for today's story. So what is the story at the moment? And the chances are, if you're interested in creating a more diverse and inclusive volunteer program, there's probably 2 real driving factors. One, you're just generally good people and you want to make volunteering programs be more accessible for everybody. 2, you want to counter what a lot of us are feeling out there, which is the challenge to find and recruit volunteers. So there's a lot of barriers to volunteering at the moment, and the numbers that you probably have seen this on 100 different decks and slides and presentations that you've attended, but it says a similar story here, which is that volunteering is, in terms of formal volunteering, the number of people doing it is in decline. And I don't believe it's because people don't want to volunteer. I believe that it's because there's a lot of challenges that people are facing around financial challenges. We've got socio-economic situations. We've got barriers to volunteering that we need as organizations and as champions of volunteering. We need to break them down and make volunteering more accessible to everybody, because, and here is the good news, there is a lot of demand. So this is the contradiction. If anybody follows any of my stuff that I post on LinkedIn, I talk about this all the time. I think that if you only read one side of the story, you would see that formal volunteering is in decline, but actually the appetite for volunteering has never been higher. So what's stopping it? And I think what's stopping it is, are programs more accessible? Do they feel like it's something I should be involved in? Do these look and sound like my people? Now, there are some things you can't control. You can't control whether or not people need to work 2 jobs at the moment to make ends meet and they don't have the time for volunteering. You can make adjustments by making volunteering opportunities maybe a little bit more flexible, maybe to show that whereas previously it might be, hey, we need you for the whole day, maybe it's to give and take a little bit and make things a little bit more accessible and more flexible for people. But I think what's really important here is that the appetite for volunteering has never been higher. And even last year, 14% of people, adults that volunteered did it for the very first time. So doors are being opened, programs are being made more accessible, technology is unlocking the potential of your volunteer programs. If there's one thing I want to emphasize is don't read the press that you see everywhere and see that formal volunteering is in decline and think that it was just going to make things more difficult for you. The demand is there, and when the demand is there, all you need to do is meet people halfway and give them what they need. So I like a good news story. Should always try and add that in where you can. Um, Ethnic diversity in UK volunteering. This I found a really interesting stat. Right, 73% of ethnic minorities said that they intended to volunteer in 2024. Yet only 25 to 30% did. So there's that intent again. There's that demand. So what was holding them back? Um, we're going to go into that in a little bit more detail. Certainly, Julie will show you how we can make our programs a little bit more accessible. I'm just emphasizing that there is a demand there for volunteering, and it's our jobs to make them more accessible. A great example of making a program more accessible is the Bradford City of Culture. I don't think there is anywhere in the UK that is more diverse than Bradford, and Bradford has one of the most fantastic volunteer programs in the UK City of Culture. 13 different languages spoken within their program, and it's a program that is growing. So again, that appetite. If you make changes to your program and make them more accessible. And some of the things that Bradford did, you're going to read about or you're going to hear from Julie in her deck as well, some of the changes that they made too. So here is a great example of when you make changes in your program to make them more accessible and more inclusive. Not only do you help unlock the volunteering potential in certain communities and groups, and maybe those are ethnic minority groups, but you can really grow the program. They've grown up to 3,000 volunteers very, very quickly just by doing these things. So if you do want to find a little bit more about Bradford, you'll be able to find them on our website, and I've got some links to share with you at the end as well. And one of my favorite examples, I tend to use London Youth Games in every presentation that I do. One, because they're absolutely lovely, and two, is because they tick every box when it comes to doing the right things. They have a brilliant volunteer program that's very inclusive. They are a great example of a relatively small charity or non-profit organization that is able to grow their volunteer base massively, nearly 1,000 for such a small outfit as well, is incredible. And they have unlocked the potential seen in corporate volunteering as well, where nearly 40% of their volunteers come from that. So how on earth did they do some of those things? Well, you're going to find out a little bit about that today as well. So I'm going to try and switch over.
Right.
Julie, can you see
Yeah.
the deck at the moment? Yeah. So there we go.
Woohoo! Fabulous. Okay, if we go on to the next one, please. So yeah, as Martin said, hello everybody. I've not seen the list, so I don't know if I've come across any of you guys before, but if I have, hello again. If I've not, my name is Julie Neilson. I've been working in advertising and marketing for a lot of years now, and I'm coming to you from a company called 11. To talk to you today about the how-to, really, to hopefully give you some really useful hints and tips about some of the practical things that you can do to really extend and make what you're doing more inclusive. So building that more inclusive volunteer programming. There's going to be a lot of stuff in here that you're doing already, but hopefully what we can do is we can sort of start to give you those few sort of more hints and tips about how to do it. So just briefly, just to let you know who I am. As I say, yeah, if we can go on to that next one, please. So I work for an agency. We're called 11. We're very much about working for and with clients who are interested in creating a social impact. So that's the sector, that's the sort of the vibe that we've got. We've got a mission statement of our own, which is really about utilising our creativity to really shape a brighter, fairer world. So working very, very much hand in hand with, got a lot of charity clients. And also we work in sort of public sector, we work in higher education, do a lot of work in the fostering space. So if we can move on again, Martin, I'm not going to go on too much about us, but effectively what we're all about, we do campaigns, we do content, we do brand work, but it's really about amplifying the voices of our clients. And within that, very much about challenging inequality throughout, however that raises its head. We're very much about driving engagement and action. An awful lot of things in this space, the intention, really flies through and comes up. But intention's great. We need action. We need to actually make an impact with what we're doing. And at 11, that very much is in our DNA. It's about, it's great things being pretty. It's great, if you're sort of everybody or your peers think something's fantastic, it's got to make a difference on the ground. And, it's part and parcel of that advocating for positive change. And if we go on for another slide, you can see just a brief snapshot of some of the charity clients that we're working with, and really proud to sort of be part of. Oxfam up there at the moment, we're currently doing a really exciting project for Oxfam, of which if you do follow 11, please do, you'll see sort of more coming through on that as time goes on. Right, enough about us, let's talk about you guys, if we can move on, Martin. So today, just really want to, it's a huge subject, so we can only really sort of start to look at the surface. I want to talk a little bit more about, perhaps an obvious point, perhaps not so obvious, but why does it matter? Martin in his introduction was talking about some of the stats that's in there and some of the challenges that we're facing in this space. And, it's really getting down to the nub of what it's about. But from that, really thinking about some of the practicalities about creating more inclusive messaging. And I think importantly, we'll talk a little bit about broadening those definitions, because sometimes it's very easy to be blinkered around these things. And then big issue for me, I get very excited about the idea of data, but thinking about data, thinking about how do we utilize the power of data when we're in this space. And Martin, if we can go on. So, why are we talking about representation here? And obviously sort of volunteering, as I don't need to tell you, it's such an important tool to really create change, to engage communities. And you need to ensure really that your volunteer program, reflects the diverse experience of the people that you're out there to sort of help and support. And that actually is pretty much a challenge. We know, certainly that there is very much sort of a mismatch that's built in. We know, from a demographic point of view, a lot of people that volunteer are older. A lot of the people that we're trying, the communities that we're trying to help, might be sort of slightly younger. There's some of these sort of demographic issues that are sort of baked in. Simply because of practicalities. You've got a bit more time when you're not sort of raising children or running around working 9 to 5. But the demographics is only one part of this. It's also about thinking about the way that we can reflect people's lived experience in this. And I think, in terms of whether you're building your team or building your volunteer thing, that representation matters, not just in terms of optics, but in terms of the experiences, those different perspectives that these people can bring to your effort, which will really enrich everything that you're doing and sort of enrich your volunteer community by just having that diversity that's baked into the heart of it. I'm sure I didn't need to tell that to any of you guys on this call, but I think it's just useful to be able to sort of start from that perspective. It's not just about ticking boxes, this by any question. So how do we go about doing it? Well, I think it's about really, start with a bit of an audit and think about some key questions that you really could do with asking yourself, and look at your own marketing materials, look at what you're doing at the moment. And be, you need to step away from sort of being this close to it and think about, well, actually, are we doing our best already? Are we truly reflecting the communities that we're serving within here? Another biggie here is jargon-free language that invites people from all backgrounds to join. Martin was talking about sort of language from the point of view of sort of spoken language and being able to understand language. But I think the other bear pit that we can often fall into here is that, you know, we're involved in an issue, we're involved in a world, and worlds always have their own language, they always have their own jargon, they always have those, you know, those things that we just sort of rattle off. We're so guilty of doing it in marketing and advertising, aren't we? But somebody who's coming in from outside of that world, you know, is that actually creating a little bit of a barrier? It's just making sure that the language that we use is not too reflective of, you know, our little sort of our little world that we're in. And I think it's sort of really from you know, it's thinking about a gut feel. A lot of this is about gut feel, and a lot of this is about recognizing intention. And I'll talk about that in a little bit more. So, you know, almost taking a bit of a step back and saying, do your efforts need to be, you know, do they feel inclusive, or are they feeling a bit forced, and are they feeling a bit, you know, inauthentic? And I don't want to ever write off that gut feeling, because sometimes you can just look at something and go, you know what, that's a bit off. And then you can start to interrogate, well, why is that the case? So let's move on a little bit. And I think, you know, a few sort of real rules, not rules, but pointers that we can think about in terms of creating that more inclusive marketing program. The one that everybody goes to, I think, is the first point, is imagery. And absolutely this needs to be sort of a key part of things. But there is also, it's a bit of a double-edged sword here, because too often I think people will think about utilising diversity in their imagery and think, great, okay, we've done that then, we've ticked a box here. And it's not necessarily what you can end up doing, really, is sort of going down the road of tokenism here. I know from a practical sense as well, there is also a little bit of an issue about, well, what imagery are you using, how are you accessing it? And obviously AI is much more our friend here. It makes sort of utilising and generating new imagery very much more easy than it was. Just a bit of an aside to share an experience that we had with one of our clients recently. We utilised AI to generate, you know, to start to sort of generate some images. We're working in healthcare. We're working in trying to recruit people into adolescent mental health services. And AI is great. It's sort of let's have a look at some images. We look for sort of, you know, doctors who are working with it. If AI hears doctors, what it tends to think a doctor is it gives you lots and lots of images of men in their 60s predominantly, who are either white or Asian, all of whom are wearing glasses. So it's sort of, you know, there are some inherent biases that are baked into the AI algorithms that you need to sort of just be aware of a little bit in terms of the prompting and the tools that you're using to sort of engage with this. Martin has given me a free pass to advertise. If you're interested in the use of AI in this way, we do a series at 11 called Segments. You can find it on our website. And we did a deep dive into utilisation of AI in image creation a couple of months back. So you might find that interesting. But I think from the perspective that we've got here is imagery, yeah, think about your diversity, but also sort of think about, you know, don't just sort of think, well, okay, I've got my list and I need to tick everything off and make sure that I've got an image of everybody. It's about that sort of sense that you're using your imagery in. Inclusive language, we've spoken about already. Don't be jargonistic. Think about, you know, okay, the age of people that you're trying to engage, some of the sort of, you know, internet savviness that people might be have accessibility issues around internet, for example. You know, that inclusivity is there. But I think what's really key here is we can often focus on inclusivity, and we therefore sort of focus almost on exclusivity by accident. And, you know, we focus in on the differences of the different types of communities that we're trying to engage. Really, it's about focusing on those universal values and thinking about, what does that mean? What's the sharing of our community? Martin was saying, volunteers, generally, they've got an altruistic gene. That's the heart of it. That's the, you know, the thing. And then thinking about highlighting the benefits that you're creating for all volunteers. So if we can move on. And I think, well, in summary, really, this is about, be a window, not a mirror here. So what you're not trying to do is just sort of say, we're the same as you, and we're also the same as you, and we're also the same as you. We're not. We are a community. And it's thinking about sort of how can we actually, open things out, and we're a window into diversity. We're not just a mirror in terms of reflecting it. So it's just sort of a nice little phrase that I think it's useful to sort of keep in mind from this. So we can move on again, Martin. And inclusive volunteering, it means more than just diversity. As we've said here, it's representation beyond that box ticking. And it's embracing that diversity, really, of sort of lived experience without here. So, it's sort of what my gender, my sexuality, my background, my class, or whatever. All of these things are the least interesting thing about me. What's actually more interesting about me, if you don't get me in a room in a pub, and I'll tell you, it's none of those things. It's all about the things that, I love, I'm passionate about. It's all of that type of thing. Those things start to become, they're diverse. That's what that diversity is, what starts to bring us together. So how can we sort of reflect and embrace that, really? And thinking about accessibility, beyond sort of the physical. Accessibility, again, we've got a segment on this one in terms of some of the things that we need to tick box on that. But, Martin mentioned before, it's about flexibility in your schedules. We have a volunteering programme here at 11. We give our staff 2 days a year to devote to volunteering. And it's actually quite difficult to spend that time because so many volunteer organisations are saying, no, we need you to commit in these sorts of chunks of time. So again, is there anything that you can try and do to start thinking about, actually accessibility is about more than that. It's about how do we accommodate people who are raising kids? How do we accommodate people, who are working in a 9 to 5 in an office? How do we deal with these things? How do we deal with people who sort of actually want their weekends to be sacrosanct, but are quite happy using their evenings? All of these sorts of questions really, really helpful in terms of becoming more inclusive and attractive. Okay, if we can move on. So yeah, we talk a lot about authenticity. How do we do this? How do we be authentic? And I think here a lot of this is about intention. A lot of this is about, you have your own values. It's about living those values. It's about representing those values. It's not about trying to sort of jam something in on the top of that doesn't reflect those values. So your values need to be at the heart of this, and people can tell. A way, I think, in terms of from your audit, if you're feeling, well, actually, we're failing around in this a little bit, this is something that we could definitely improve, is engage with your community that you want to represent and actually get some co-creation workshops going in, actually get some volunteers to share their experiences to be able to sort of create more authenticity, broaden things out, get out, talk to people, listen to their stories, and start to actually, you will get a much better handle. And again, a lot of this comes down to your gut feel. Show your stuff to people. Say, does this work for you? Does this feel authentic? If it doesn't feel right, it isn't right. You need to do something about it. Let's move on again. So how to be authentic in one slide. As we've said, it's about engaging the communities that you serve, involving those diverse voices in your communication efforts. And as we've said, it's really about, inclusive storytelling. And, it's not that representation of me from my ethnicity or whatever it might be. It's making sure that we're sort of being inclusive in that much, much wider sense. Okay, if we can move on again. Data, we love data, love a bit of data at 11. How can you use data to improve your volunteer programme in terms of its EDI? Well, I think it is very, very useful actually to sort of, again, as part of that audit, have a look at your current demographics. Sort of look at, age, gender, ethnicity, disability status, all of those sorts of things. Really, really important to go, well, what are we doing well? Where are we really, where are we succeeding here? And where are the gaps that we need to sort of start to think about? And again, get feedback from your volunteers. What's their thoughts in this? Where do they feel that you can improve? Where do they feel, that your messaging is landing really, really well? Where are they feeling like, well, actually, I don't feel sort of represented here? And again, thinking about sort of outreach from this. So, actually look at your volunteers and thinking about sort of if there's certain communities that you are underrepresenting, get out there, talk to them, use your network to be able to sort of talk to the people that you want to attract, and really think about how you can tailor your messaging, tailor your offering to them. The other thing about data is this isn't a one-shot strategy. Do it as your audit, but keep on going back and do it regularly, because stuff changes more quickly than you know. And again, if you're wanting to make changes, it's useful to have that benchmark to check in and see how you're doing. So it's getting to do it regularly. Okay, if we can move on. So if you've got the insights, you've talked to people, you've done your outreach, you've had a look at your audit, you've got an idea about, okay, we've got all of these tools that we can use in terms of applying lived experience, applying inclusive storytelling, utilising AR in terms of generating our imagery. What are we going to try and do next? Well, I think it's about getting in, doing that audit, finding out and thinking about your marketing strategy from the heart. This is not about applying some plasters over the top of something which might not be as fit for purpose as it possibly can be. So get that bit right at the start. Thinking about tailoring your volunteer roles. So again, if you've got a one size fits all, is that really the best that we can do? Or can we start to tailor our messaging and tailor our roles to people with different needs? Maybe they are accessibility needs, maybe they are language needs, whatever that may be, whatever's been uncovered from your insight research, to be able to start to think, we're not just going to do a one size fits all here. Let's be a little bit cleverer about the way that we do it. And as we've said, ensuring that ongoing evaluation. So if we move on to the next slide. Gosh, we've rattled through this. This is such a huge subject, but hopefully some of this has been really, really useful. And I think the takeaways here that I'd like us to be able to sort of come back to and is true inclusivity is about more than just numbers. It really is about representing diverse lived experience. And it's that, like I say, the most interesting thing about people is their lived experience. And EDI is part of that, absolutely, and needs to be encompassed, but it's more than just that narrow definition. Volunteers must feel that your program is genuinely embracing of diversity, and this authenticity is key. So it's not your messaging, it's the way that you behave, it's the way that you live, it's the way that you show up. And again, if there's problems with that you uncover, you need to fix them first before you fix your marketing. Use your data thoughtfully, regularly analyse your recruitment program, your data, and build on those learnings, sort of make it a regular process, real good housekeeping to be able to do. And think about your culture. It's that culture of belonging. It's where volunteers of all backgrounds feel valued and empowered. Empower them to help you with this. This is sort of, I think, the great thing. They are a fantastic resource for you as a marketing department. Use them and really get them to contribute your best. And if we can finally go on, last slide, I promise. Tomorrow, get out there, evaluate what you're doing, think about engaging your volunteers and your new communities, and make those adjustments. Some of you, it's going to be teeny, and hopefully what this presentation will have done for you is to go, great, I'm doing it all already. Fantastic. For those of you who can sort of make a difference, hopefully we've helped you, give you some direction with that. And that is it from me. Thank you.
Oh, very good, Julia. There's such a big topic to rattle through in a 20-minute slot. So, and there's so much to take from that. So much, in fact, that when I follow up the email to the attendees and those who have registered, they'll be able to flick back through this, I think. And I definitely think it's going to be one of those decks where you pause yourself on a particular slide and sort of unpack what that means for your organization. So thank you very much for going through that. And we do have some time for some questions. So if anybody does have any, just please type them in on the right hand side. While people are considering what they might ask, I just want to say, Julie, one of my key takeaways from what you just said there's a few, but I think that I felt from what you said that being authentic takes some bravery. It takes being open with the content that you've got and actually approaching your community and saying, is this okay? Does this speak to your community and that? And just acknowledging that maybe I need your say so in this and not,
Totally.
you know what I
Totally.
mean?
And I think the other part of bravery is being transparent about that you haven't got everything right. If you haven't got anything right, don't pretend that we have. It goes back, I think, to intention, as we were saying here. And if you're really, really wanting to do this, it's genuinely got to come from the heart of the organisation. And as you say, I think that bravery of going out and going, yeah, we want to do something, is really key.
And another thing, I mean, it was one small section of a slide that you've got, but data, I think, plays a huge role in mapping out what your current program looks like.
Mm,
I don't know if it's remiss of me to say, but I do wonder how many organisations out there with volunteer programs would even be able to split their
mhm,
volunteer pool by their demographic and even know. And maybe,
mm.
do you think it's okay to ask? Like, if you were collecting data for like volunteers, uh, yeah,
I think it's absolutely okay to ask. I think, and again, the devil's in the detail with this. It's how you ask. And that's sort of really important, but also, and don't make it, ask politely and don't make it mandatory.
yeah,
If you're comfortable sharing this with us, then that is really, really helpful to us as an organisation. Here's how we use this data. It's anonymised. All of those sorts of things. We're using this data to help us become more inclusive. You can be so upfront. Be polite. Don't make it mandatory. Give people a rationale for why you're doing it. A
yeah.
lot of the time we're asked for our information all of the time, aren't we? And it's a bit of a, how dare you? But if I've got a reason, if I understand why you're asking it, and
Mm.
I buy into that, then I'm more than happy to share.
And then once you've got that transparency and people do give you the details, I think that unlocks such a great
Mm,
potential for looking at where can you leverage this new insight that you've got in your advertising as well. But like looping back around, it's about being brave enough to ask those questions. We
mm.
Speaking of questions, we do have a question here of can you share any examples of any charities that you think have done a great job in expressing diversity and inclusion in their marketing? I know that it's probably okay to choose your own programs because I know that you've actually picked up
Um,
awards or been finalists for a lot of campaigns that you've done with charities. But does anything come to mind?
there's so many, and I think I think to varying degrees, charity. We work with a lot of charities, from big global charities like Oxfam through to small organisations like Make Tiny Changes, who are really minuscule little budgets to try and do things on, and I think it comes back down, I think, to the intention and the approach that we're doing. Obviously, somebody like Oxfam, we're working with them currently. We've worked with them a couple of times in the past, and they've been on such a journey over decades, really. But they're still moving on. They are still evolving in terms of their approach to these issues, and I think what they are doing really sort of speaks, I think, to the dedication of making it an evolving commitment. They are definitely an organisation that is driven by that incorporates data, that incorporates that ethos into what they do. And again, just the sheer scale and the types of volunteers that they have working, throughout the organisation. So they've got an awful lot of information at their fingertips, and I think from the way in which they are using that and continuing to use that to evolve what they do and how they do it is really key. And again, having been involved with them on specific programs, to the detail to which we sort of start to incorporate and think about EDI throughout what we're doing. I mean, I'm talking about comms campaigns here rather than communications to try and recruit volunteers.
Yeah,
But I think it's the same principle that's there.
yeah, the how and how they're delivering it
Mm.
is universal. It doesn't matter what size organization you are.
Yeah,
The approach that you take is scalable
I,
depending on where you are. You don't have to be an Oxfam,
yeah,
right?
and I think that's sort of it, really. It's almost really, in a way, don't get too hung up on the end result. It's almost really, if you get the approach right, if you get the how right, if you get the authenticity right, if you get your intention right, then actually what you end up with on a digital ad or on a website or on a leaflet or a flyer or whatever will be right.
Mm,
It just will be, because you're not sort of trying to solve all of those problems at the
mm,
point at which you are trying to do a volunteer campaign. those problems are sort of solved and run through like a red thread through your organisation and through through your approach. So I think, if anything, the takeaway is do that audit on your approach. Don't just look at your materials and go, oh right, okay, well we could do with changing the picture. That's not the answer.
The examples that I had at the start, Bradford and London Youth Games, you'll find them in the latest white paper that our team has produced specifically around the topic of diversity in the voluntary sector. You can find that on our website, or if you want to, we're all used to using QR codes now. Thank you very much, COVID. You'll be able to find that on the screen at the moment, but there's some white papers on there to help you build out those stories and take some of the insight. Some of the stuff that Julie mentioned today is common themes within that document as well. And of course, check out 11 Agency. The website address again, I'll just go back to it just so you guys can see. I did skip on there, but 11agency.co.uk, and be able to get in touch with an agency that truly understands diversity and marketing campaigns. And thank you very much, Julie, and thank you for everybody else that joined this morning, gave up part of their morning to make all of our volunteer programs that much more inclusive, that much more diverse and impactful. Thank you.